If you've spent any time around campfire lore, survival manuals, or even modern documentaries, you've heard the warning, "Never heat rocks, they'll explode." That statement has scared generations away from one of humanity's oldest and most reliable heat technologies. Before we go any further, if you value serious evidence-based history like this and want more deep dives that cut through myths, make sure you subscribe to Iron Age Instincts now. What follows isn't internet folklore or vague reenactor wisdom. It's grounded in archaeology, experimental history, and physics that ancient people understood through practice long before we named the equations. The idea that rocks inherently explode in fire is a modern oversimplification born from partial truth. Yes, some rocks can fracture violently when heated, but the key word is some. Ancient societies across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas relied on heated stones daily for cooking, bathing, metalworking, and shelter heating. If rocks reliably exploded, stone boiling, sweat lodges, hypocaust systems, and Iron Age hearths would not appear consistently in the archaeological record. What actually happens is thermal stress, combined with trapped moisture, or air. When water inside a stone rapidly turns to steam, pressure builds faster than it can escape, causing cracking or spalling. Ancient people learned, through repeated experience, which stones failed and which endured. This knowledge became tradition, passed down without needing written theory. Stone selection was never random. River cobbles, granite, basalt, and dense igneous rocks dominate ancient heating contexts for a reason. These stones are formed under high pressure and temperature, giving them tight crystalline structures with low porosity. Limestone, shale, sandstone, and flint, on the other hand, are far more likely to crack, pop, or chemically break down under heat. Iron Age hearth sites repeatedly show reused stones with heat-darkened surfaces and no catastrophic failure. This tells us something crucial. People tested stones gradually. A stone that cracked was discarded. A stone that survived became part of the hearth rotation. Over time, safe heating stone became a known local resource, just like good clay or workable bog ore. Thermal shock is the real enemy, not heat itself. Rapid temperature change creates uneven expansion within the stone. Ancient techniques minimized this risk by heating stones slowly at the edge of fires before moving them closer. Stones were never thrown directly into roaring flames straight from water or frost. They were dried, warmed, and introduced progressively. Moisture content matters just as much. River stones were favoured not because they were wet, but because they had already survived countless wet-dry and freeze-thaw cycles. Any internal weaknesses had already failed naturally. For practical application today, selecting stones from dry riverbeds or ancient gravel deposits and preheating them gently, it actually replicates this ancient vetting process. Stone boiling is honestly one of the clearest proofs that heated rocks are manageable and safe. Archaeological evidence from Iron Age Europe to pre-contact North America shows cooking pits lined with hides, bark containers, or wooden troughs filled with water. Heated stones were transferred from the fire into the liquid, raising the temperature steadily without direct flame. The practical takeaway is control. Stones were cycled, not overheated. A stone that cooled was returned to the fire while another took its place. This avoided extreme temperature gradients and, really prolonged the life of each stone. Modern survivalists can, apply this method using hardwood containers or even thick leather, as long as stone selection and gradual heating are respected. From Scandinavian sweat houses to indigenous American sweat lodges, heated stones were really central to controlled steam production. These structures relied on stones that absorbed heat evenly and released it slowly when water was poured over them. Basalt and granite, they dominate these contexts because they crack less and radiate heat consistently. Ancient builders also oriented fire pits and stone piles to reduce sudden cooling. Water was poured deliberately, not dumped. Steam was generated in waves, not explosions. This same principle applies today. Adding small amounts of water gradually prevents thermal shock and produces stable heat rather than violent fracturing. One of the most overlooked technologies of the Iron Age is, thermal mass heating. Hearthstones absorbed fire heat during the active burn and continued radiating warmth long after the flames died down. This allowed for fuel efficiency in environments where wood was scarce or, rather labour-intensive to gather. For modern application, this principle is, identical to masonry heaters and rocket mass stoves. Stones chosen for density and stability can, store hours of warmth. The Iron Age approach teaches restraint. A steady fire heating a stone mass outperforms a roaring blaze that wastes fuel and risks damage. Modern experimental archaeologists have, time and again, demonstrated that when ancient rules are followed, stone heating is predictable and safe. Failures almost always trace back to ignoring gradual heating, using sedimentary stone, or introducing moisture too quickly. In controlled experiments, dense igneous stones survive dozens of heating cycles without significant degradation. This matters for survival training and historical reenactment alike. Understanding material behaviour, rather than just repeating warnings without context, allows safer, more authentic practice. Heating stone is not a primitive gamble. It is a refined, field-tested technology, actually older than metal vessels. By stripping away modern fear and returning to evidence, we gain practical skills and, honestly, a clearer understanding of ancient daily life. These were not reckless people flirting with explosions. They were careful observers working within physical limits they understood intimately. If you found this breakdown valuable and want more myth-busting, evidence-driven explorations like this, subscribe to Iron Age Instincts, share this guide with fellow historians and survivalists, and keep these old skills alive by understanding them properly rather than fearing them.